There she is.
Are we going to give an introduction?
No, that's not.
Okay, but wait a minute. She doesn't want to introduce, but I got to say something. I got to say something. This woman sitting next to me, I don't know where to start, so I'm just going to jump right on in. A few years ago, you know, Che Guevara talks about a lot of things. He talks about the revolutionary being guided by great feelings of love. He talks about how you must always feel any injustice anywhere very deeply, that you need to take it personal.
That's real.
You know, this woman sitting next to me who was a victim of U.S. imperialism, who was in the concentration camps, right? I'm doing some research several years ago about the provisional government, the Republic of New Africa. Is everybody familiar with that?
All right.
And I'm reading this stuff and it says, blah, 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 Republic of New Africa, blah, blah, blah. Yuri Kochiyama became a citizen in 1968, blah, blah, blah. I had to marry. I said, say what? Yuri Kochiyama became a citizen of the Republic of New Africa. Puerto Rican. Yuri Kochiyama, every time I look around, I see this woman's name.
Okay.
So then I'm at UCLA working with NOMO several years ago. And a sister wants to do something about Malcolm X. So she does something about the assassination of Malcolm X. She goes and gets this picture of Malcolm laying on the floor of the Audubon Ballroom, February 21st, 1965. He's been assassinated. People are clamoring all around him. They got his shirt open. You know, he's looking like he's on his way out. He was on his way out. And there's this Asian woman cradling his head. And I'm like, that's Yuri Kochiyama, that's Yuri Kochiyama. They don't know what I'm talking about. They think I'm just gibbering. I'm like, you all right, Tom? Yeah, I'm fine. That's Yuri Kochiyama, that's Yuri Kochiyama. This woman has truly taken to heart that type of maxim. This woman has lived her life in support of other people's struggles for liberation. She understands that her liberation is tying with world humanity. We need to understand this woman, how great she is. Just as great as this woman, we have come to honor Safiya Bukhari about picking up the work. We must also honor Sister Yuri Kochiyama. So let me be the first one. I told her she can be mad at me later. I got to do that.
He knows everything. So did the brother that was right here before. Gosh, I want to thank all of you who have come here. Saturday, I know for all of you it's a busy day. You probably should be shopping or something else. And yet you came here. And it's such a nice mixed group. I wish we could all get to know each other. First, I want to thank Nishida for inviting me. And I was so surprised to see Michael Novick. I never met him, but I read his stuff. And then to hear, I couldn't quite catch the name of that brother. Was it
Mpenduzi.
Mpenduzi.
Yeah, what?
Mpenduzi.
Mpenduzi.
Right.
Mpenduzi.
And I'm sure you know Marlon Karina. He knows you well.
Oh, goodness. I don't know if you know me. We all know who he is. Yeah. But to be invited to something like this is really something different. You don't always go to a place like this. I couldn't believe that as I walked in the door and there was Malcolm X's picture. You don't usually go to church.
All right.
And there he was, and there was Mandela, and there was a painting of someone that looked like Aldrich Cleaver, was it? I don't know. There's a painting there. And of course, Martin Luther King. All right. I want to thank those of you who made this event possible. Just as Thandi has said, Safiya Bukhari is quite an unusual person. She's an impressive Black Panther sister, activist, leader. She passed away on August 25th of last year from a heart attack. She had just come home from her mother's funeral. Today is also, as the brother who announced it, today is February 21st, a day we can never forget. It's the assassination date of the awesome, phenomenal champion of Black liberation, Malcolm X. I will first talk about Safiya, a very, very dear comrade, and then I would like to say something in remembrance of Malcolm. When I first met Safiya, she was only about 17. I was about 40. As young as she was, she quickly became one of the most dedicated grassroots Panther organizer, a political strategist, an eloquent speaker, an audacious radical, a one-time political prisoner herself, and a profound supporter of political prisoners, a beloved member of the Black community of Harlem. She was involved locally, but was a devout internationalist. Mumia Abu Jamal called Safiya the lioness for liberation and a lifeline for political prisoners, and that's what she was. Her passing was a shock to Black Panther parties all over the country, even if the Black Panther parties itself are not alive, the Panthers are alive. Especially in New York, she was missed. We could not believe that she had passed away. It was just quite suddenly that after the funeral, she had a heart attack. And she is missed by political prisoners across the country because she kept in touch with hundreds and hundreds of them. Safiya was born, as I think Tony mentioned, Bernice Jones, but was given the name Safiya Bukhari from the Imam of Greenhaven Prison in Stormville, New York. He was the best known Imam, Imam Rasul Suleiman. Do any of you remember him? Rasul Suleiman, good. He was once Robert 35X, but when Malcolm left the NOI, Suleiman was one of them. About 200 of them left the NOI and went with Malcolm, and you know that he then started MMI, Muslim Mosque Incorporated, and OAU, Organization of African American Unity. Safiya used to go to Greenhaven Prison every weekend to learn more about Islam. And she was so proud when Imam Rasul Suleiman gave her the name Safiya Bukhari. I don't know what it means. Do you? Safiya Bukhari. Okay. But she believed, like Malcolm, to keep your religion at home in a closet or just leave it at the mosque. For her, she felt the struggle should be up front. Safiya was a brilliant student and was offered a scholarship to one of the elite colleges in the East Coast. But when she witnessed a police beating a young Black man selling Black Panther papers on the street, that changed her life. She wanted to know what kind of a group the Black Panther was. She picked up one of the newspapers that kid was beaten had, and after taking it home and reading it, the very next day, she began inquiring where's the Black Panther office and how could she join? She went to the Harlem chapter and joined there. And what did she do? She did the usual things that all Panthers do. Sell newspapers on the street, become part of the Breakfast for Children program, read Mao's Red Book, attend PE session, political education session, visit prisons, go to all the marches, demonstrations, and meetings, and she was speaking at all of them. Safiya was a very busy young woman. It was hard to keep track of her. And somewhere along the way, I don't know, she became a mother. And she also, at some point in her life, she married one of the New Haven Three. And some of you, I hope, remember the name Ashanti Alston. I hope you remember, means one of the New Haven Three. Safiya's ever-changing life was never dull. Her journey through her movement's life were memorable. Perhaps her most dramatic moment was when she escaped from the Alderson Women's Prison in West Virginia. It was an excellently planned move and thus was successful. With a white female comrade, the two had quietly, for months and months, been prying and opening in their cell. Then one night, and it happened to be New Year's Eve, because she knew that all the jail guards would be drinking and partying. Well, by then they had a big enough space that they could crawl through. And so New Year's Eve, they crawled out of there and then they climbed over 2 fences, were chased by dogs, but reached the highway where a car was waiting for them. About 6 hours later, about 5 a.m., my husband woke me up and said, "Hey, someone's knocking on the door." But I went to, and he said, "Oh, it's probably one of your friends." There was Safiya with a huge grin on her face. It was one of the coldest nights. She had no sweater or coat, and it was one of the coldest New Year's morning. Well, you know, this year, New York, it was the coldest winter they said they had, so it must have been like that. So I knew she must be in a hurry somewhere. She better get out anyway. So I just passed her a coat and some food, and she was off. Another dramatic moment was when Safiya, with some comrades, tried to free 3 members of the Black Liberation Movement. You knew about it. The mission was unsuccessful, but it showed what kind of warrior Safiya was. Her ideas, I don't know how she gets these ideas to how to get people out of prison, but she is amazing. I mean, she risked her life on many occasions. And of course, you know who Asada is. She is very much like Asada. But there were many other black sisters who did similar things, whose names are known and we shouldn't be telling their stories. And though such women are few, besides the blacks, there are many Puerto Rican independentistas, so many were able to get out 2 years ago, and there were many white anti-imperialist women, and still there are those in prison, and Marilyn Buck got 80 years, but I think she's done 22. A quick movement odyssey of Safiya finds her becoming a Black Panther in the 60s. She was a teenager. I don't know if she finished college, but she was brilliant. She was a member of the National Committee to defend political prisoners in the 70s, because by the 70s, most of the Panther leaders were in prison. And then she herself became a political prisoner in the 70s when she was caught. She was a Jericho organizer in the 80s, and a member and not a member, and a citizen, because you don't become a member. She was a citizen and elected official of the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa. I'm so surprised you know about so many blacks don't know. Thank you. All right, Safiya was unstoppable. Her last project before she died was working to get support for Fred Hilton, now known as Kamal Sadiki. Do any of you remember Fred Hilton? He was a Panther in the BLA. After 30 years, they busted Kamal for a police killing that happened 30 years ago. I'm sure the police had no evidence, and yet they were able to find him guilty. You know how they do it all the time. They were able to find a snitch. And so just on the evidence of a snitch, that Fred Hilton, Kamal, is in prison now. He has 1 lifetime plus 10 years. Safiya, like other New York Panthers who transitioned before her, I don't know the names of all over here in California, but the ones in New York were people like New Washington, Jaheed, Rima Kearney, Twyman Myers, and then just so many. Well, anyway, they were all awesome, fearless, and dedicated. And everyone has amazing stories that they could tell. They all left a legacy that the Panther Party can be proud of. They were part of, as she said, a part of the worldwide struggle who fought for self-determination, human rights, and basic needs for all. We will never forget Safiya Bukhari, her unpretentious demeanor, her endless devotion, her genuine camaraderie, and her excellent leadership. She was also a great admirer of Malcolm X, but I think all Panthers were. And now about Malcolm. We must remember him today. I hope that in California they are holding some kind of a memorial for him. In New York, there are so many groups doing something for Malcolm. In Harlem alone, I'm sure there'll be at least 3 memorials. Brooklyn will have its own, Queens will have its own, and the Bronx. Malcolm's demise was not unexpected. You can imagine a man like him, he was not supposed to live very long. This country would never, never allow a man like Malcolm to live, to survive, to touch the lives of others. He was only 39, but you know all the black leaders died around that time. Well, Martin Luther King was 39, and the greatest African leader, Patrice Lumumba, was only 35, and he was tortured and beaten. He had everything done to him, and then was executed. Those of you, I'm sure, here have seen the film about Patrice Lumumba. It's done by a Haitian. If you haven't seen it, please go see it. You will see what he went through. But there's so much that Malcolm has gone through that people don't even know about. And a lot of times it was, I wouldn't say that they were black people, they were Negroes. They were used by the FBI.
I told you she was bad.
And many of his closest, best brothers were killed, and their names aren't even remembered. But Malcolm, his courage and brilliant life left an imprint not only on his people, but on the enemy. And you know, always, they're still trying to make him into something else. He is not the kind of black man that this envious, swaggering, egotistic country would allow to live. Malcolm's unparalleled, heroic example of African manhood intimidated the U.S. to the point that the craven leadership of this nation gave the order for his assassination. Do you know who gave the order, though, for Patrice Lumumba's assassination? Who? Right, how'd you? Eisenhower. Good for you. Where did you read it? Because you usually don't. They just say CIA.
The Congo Cables, it's a book about it.
What?
The Congo Cables, it's a book about
Oh,
it.
well, there's another book, but I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's a good book that you all have to read. And I was surprised that it would be in there because it was a fiction story, but that was in there. Malcolm left a legacy, not by speech alone, but by action. A legacy of how to live, to be proud of your African ancestry, to fight for freedom, justice, and human dignity. And those three words, other people picked up, and no matter what background, they felt, yes, they should fight for freedom, justice, and human dignity for all. Malcolm, in his short life, changed the direction of many of the blacks who were in the movement there. He changed their focus from black nationalism to Pan-Africanism and to continue the path of African revolutionary internationalism. And I would like to end with two of Malcolm's quotes, and one quote, I don't know who, but it's a very good quote. One of his, I think, best quote is, "If we are extremists, we are not ashamed of it. In fact, the conditions that our people suffer are extreme, and an extreme illness cannot be cured with a moderate medicine." Right? And another one, "I believe there will ultimately be a clash between the oppressed and those who do the oppressing. I believe there will be a clash between those who want freedom, justice, and equality for everyone, and those who want to continue the system of exploitation. I believe there will be that kind of a clash, but I don't think it will be based on the color of the skin." And lastly, I want to repeat, it's too bad, the person who wrote it's a beautiful few lines. It's by some unknown person. It says, "Malcolm was not just a black man. He was the black experience. He was baptized into blackness and repudiated his slave name and took on the X, the unknown, the potential of what could be, the reality of what he became. Thank you.